Hello, how's it going? Mm. Today I'm going to be talking about something slightly higher level that I've noticed going on in society, but it seems to be on repeat. It's just the flavor of what's going on that seems to be changing, but it's the same thing. I suppose that I would just jump out and say it that moral authoritarianism. I don't know, maybe sort of absolutists. If you want to call it something like that. Because the word authoritarian gets kicked around a lot, and I try to avoid using cliches, mostly because it's lazy language, and lazy language means that there's not a lot of thought going on in the process of speech, and I think that if you, even if it does kind of have a ring of truth to it by using the word authoritarian, I think it loses a lot of its meaning because it's overused. The same way that people who drink a lot need a lot more to get drunk because they've built a tolerance towards the drink. So these more authoritarians, I'll call them absolutists, they want to make you feel guilty for anything that they've gone, anything that they think is wrong. So when I was a kid, I suppose that one of the things, benefits of being, I would be turning 40 in a couple weeks, and so I'm not really panicking about that. One of the things that turning that age kind of makes you reflect on the past. And it seems to me that I remember the 1990s very well, and a good chunk of the 80s. Now, a lot of things weren't on your radar when you're a kid, but um, one of the things that kind of stuck with me, particularly in the 1990s, was the whole when we moved down from Philadelphia down to Virginia. It's a very different world down here, particularly in the 90s, where a lot of people were trying to push their religion into politics. Um, this meant trying to ban certain things that the religion didn't like. And particularly, these people were evangelical Christians, very joyless people, and didn't really have a sense of humor about anything. And so, the first thing they go after is the movies, the TV shows, the music. That was big for me because I was a teenager in the 1990s, and you go after my music, I start taking it personally. Particularly if it's not you don't like it, it's you don't want me to listen to this. You're trying to steal my joy. Um, so these moral authoritarians essentially just wanted to make you either feel guilty for doing anything that they think is wrong, and then they want to stop you from enjoying things that they think are wrong. So, I mean, in the old days, it would be like drinking, smoking, but now it's sort of evolving into I don't want you to eat meat. I don't want you to vape. I don't want you have to give to charity, or they will have a go at you for giving to the wrong charity. They'll have a go at you for not getting involved with politics. And then when you do get involved with politics and you don't go for their particular type of politics, they have a go at you for that. They want to attack you for caring about a certain subject or not caring about a certain subject. And they will do anything they can in their power to try to convince you, 9 times out of 10, via some sort of sophistry, essentially uh, tortured logic, or even if it's inherently like logically internally logical, the premises of the logic are totally they're totally not true. And they will do anything. They'll use any method to make you believe what they believe. And often they will do this with unsolicited advice, unsolicited opinions, speeches, whatever. And you just kind of start to think yourself, well, I never really asked to be evangelized or proselytized. Um, uh, and why are you so interested in the way I vote? I mean, it's one thing if we're talking about taxes and stuff like that, but you're trying to change fundamentally the way I think about life, and you don't offer anything better. You're doing it with nothing but hatred in your heart. And honestly, I look at you and I see the joyless, soulless lives that you lead, and I don't want any part of it. So in this case, so in the 1980s and 90s, it was a particularly right wing approach to use this, and now it's completely left wing. And so I don't know exactly what is driving this. My first guess is to think that they don't really listen to anybody, like any opposite opinions. And again, I don't like using cliched language because it does tend to be very lazy, but there is a sense of a bubble, like they tune out anything that doesn't agree with them. And so I think that, in the 1980s and 90s, if it wasn't overtly Christian and totally by the book, it was to be thrown out. And this is a very old thing you see with many types of religions. Particularly Christianity has gone through a lot of waves, and we're just familiar with the Christian world because we live in a culturally Christian society. However, this has happened in the Muslim world, this happens in other worlds, is that there's a constant sense of trying to purify the culture. And it seems largely like baseless. These people don't have, they have to convince you through very twisted logic in order to try to essentially brainwash you. And you either get beaten down because you're just unable to fight it, you're too lazy to fight it, or you're just too tired to fight it. And so, like I say, I never asked to, I'm speaking in generalities mostly because, I try to avoid politics when I can. But what I've noticed is that the right and the left, the right of the 90s and 80s and the left of today are essentially reading from the same hymn sheet, that they will push their form of morality, their religion. And if the left today are not overtly religious, all of their beliefs really, they are a form of religion of a sort. Their ethics, all of these things, religion, morality, ethics, are very, very personal things that are based on your personal life, your experiences, your beliefs, the influences of the people around you, which means your friends, your family, what goes on at work. I've heard something that you are basically the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. So if you hang out with a bunch of activists, you're probably going to think very similar things to them. If you hang out with a bunch of stoners, you're going to have a very stoner-like mentality. But one of the things that you notice is anybody who's very gung-ho about trying to moralize and try to force you to believe something, or at least bludgeon you to death with their morals, it's a form of colonization. And that's something that the left wing really just is very anti these days, is that you're trying to take over my mind through force. That's pretty much colonization with your ideas. And so my advice to anybody who is annoyed by these people is I would avoid them like the plague. I would understand how they operate, but do not let them into your life. Listen to what they say from afar. Come up with some good answers. The libraries are full of good ideas. And I would use your library. There's tons of free shit on the internet. Go out and learn a lot of basics about free speech, about plurality of thought, and basically there are so many holes in the right-wing authoritarians and the left-wing authoritarians viewpoints that it's like Swiss cheese. It's just that because, let's put it like this, they do not operate under the assumption that they're wrong. don't think that they understand that there's a possibility that they're wrong about anything. They're totally convinced that they're right, and they're totally convinced that you're wrong. And in a world where right and wrong live in such, in their minds, in such staunchly separate camps, they're separate and they're very, you know, calcified. Their side is always going to be good, and your side is always going to be evil if you're on the outside. Um, so I would say you need to avoid these people because they have a very absolutist mentality. So the thing is that ultimately they are either, in a cynical sense, they're either puppet masters or con artists who are just looking to control you because they get off on that sort of thing. Um, or what's even worse is that they actually believe the things that they say. That's dangerous because they are themselves are the converted. They themselves are the brainwashed. And so ultimately, since happiness is the goal in your life, and that's largely subjective down to what makes you happy. I know that's a bit of a tautology, but what makes you happy is not what makes me happy. If you like comic books, it's not a problem to you. You know what I mean? Like you don't live your life for that at the expense of other good things in life. It's a healthy hobby or healthy interest. That doesn't make me happy. I'm not very interested in comic books. I do not want to stop you from reading comic books. Only when it's I won't even use the law on this. I just don't think it's healthy to read comic books, constantly, or uh, you know, live your life on TikTok or any of these things. I don't think it's healthy, but I don't want to stop you. Perhaps that's why I never really felt comfortable with the left or the right, because I'm much more of a libertarian thinker. Like, I don't really want to control you. I don't want to use the law to bully you into believing what I believe. So, since happiness is the goal, and what makes you happy is very different to what makes other people happy, uh, falling for or following this moral authoritarianism or moral absolutism is not going to make you happy. It's going to make the absolutist happy. It's not going to make you happy because ultimately this person does not have your best interests at heart. So they'll make you try to do something. There are a lot of tactics. They'll make you do it out of guilt. You see a lot of that. Try to push like white guilt. And if you're not white, they'll call you a race traitor or internalized racism like that. So they're trying to make you feel guilty. Don't fall for the guilt. The only things you should feel guilty about are things that you've actually done, you know are wrong, and I would say, largely, okay, admit the guilt, don't let it linger too long in your head. So all of you Catholics or former Catholics or Catholic adjacents or Jews out there, yeah, you need to know that guilt in small pieces, is small doses. It's healthy. Don't live there. It's not a healthy place to live. They will try to make you do something out of vanity. So in a sense, is vanity is not that's not necessarily the guilt feeling. The vanity part of it is they're trying to make you look good. Don't you want to look good? Don't you want to have the right opinions? Don't you want to other people to stand up and applaud? Now, social media is one of those places where people stand up and applaud, or they press a button to signal their approval. But ultimately, it is about a vanity, a form of vanity that you just want to be seen as having the right opinions. And this is a sort of, I won't use the term mass hypnosis there because that's sort of a controversial term. But in a sense, you're getting swept up in a wave of enthusiasm that isn't healthy. It's not based off of anything. And it's more about how you are seen than actually coming to the right conclusions and saying, is this viewpoint actually work? Or is it basically, I want to be seen having the right things? I think Christians should beware of this. I mean, largely I'm drawing from Christian background because that's, we are, most of us in America are cultural Christians, that Jesus actually talks about this in the Sermon on the Mount. It's like, don't pray in public, don't fast in public, don't give alms in public, because it's more about buying yourself praise than anything else. Come to your own conclusions on your own. Do your if you feel compelled to give to charity, if you feel compelled to pray, if you feel to do some sort of thing to boast about it, really undoes a lot of the charity, because it makes it more about how you are seen rather than the actual thing itself, the cause itself. And there are many other forms of that, but those are the two large things. Is either they're trying to get you to do something out of guilt, or trying to get you to do something out of vanity. Both of those feelings, vanity and guilt, are terribly, terribly destructive to your personality. Ultimately, you will be unhappy because you don't actually believe in the thing itself. You just want what's behind it. You want to assuage any guilt that you have. You want to look better than you do. But whether or not you actually achieve the goal is kind of secondary, maybe even tertiary. And so ultimately, this is not going to make you happy. Because vanity, if you sort of play up your vanity, it never ends. Your vanity will never be satisfied. It will always go on to the next thing to be vain about. What else do I look like? How else, how else do I look? How else, what do people say about me? That kind of thing. Oh, it's just going to move on to the next subject, or the next way that it sort of expresses itself out in the real world. So my ultimate position in this is I will not surrender my will or my happiness to this sort of person. I will change my mind if the facts kind of force me to. I will, I do not listen to people who harangue, who practice demagoguery. I just don't do it. I actually shut down and I push these people away. Perhaps it's a defense mechanism, but it seems to work. And I do consider myself to be a very open-minded individual. Change my mind when the situation warrants it, but I don't fall for guilt trips anymore. I don't fall for blind, or let's say this, very dumb evangelizing from moral authoritarians. And ultimately, you should do the same. And I understand that I'm trying to convince you of something, but I really am. I don't even know who you are. But I know that people will not be happy, and they'll probably treat each other like crap. And somehow this is going to get back to me. If everybody's unhappy in the world, somehow my life is going to be worse. I generally do want people to be happy. I am altruistic in my general feelings of, I want you to be happy. I want other people to be happy, so long as they're not really stepping on anybody. And to fall for this kind of crap moral authoritarianism is going to crush your spirit, because they'll never be satisfied just crushing you. They're going to go on to the next person, and they're not going to help you get out of that sort of sinkhole that you've fallen into as far as your spirit is concerned. They're going to move on to the next person, and they're either going to try to convert you into not only thinking what they think, but behaving as they behave. And just look at the left wing, like the radical parts of the left wing. They look identical to the right wing back in the 80s and 90s. They're very unhappy people. They don't really say what they're going to replace your world with. It ain't going to be good. And you are going to be left completely broken. And the only thing that's going to fill the gap in your personality is going on and making other people miserable. So that's about all I got for you. So I will see you in the next video. Ta.